bringing sports, entertainment, and technology podcasts together. This is SPNT.
You're listening to the Who-Dey Weekly Podcast. Who-Dey Weekly is brought to you by Stitcher.com. Download the Stitcher Smart Radio app today at Stitcher.com/SPNT. What's happening, Bengals fans? Soup's here for Who-Dey Weekly. It's been a rough one last couple of weeks. It's kind of hard to get up for these shows when your team continues to tank away their season. Maybe tank's not the right adjective, but they're certainly not playing up to the expectations that we have set for Bengals fans. Welcome to Who-Dey Weekly, episode 86. I am Nick Suberling, joined alongside my tag team partner, Mickey Mentor. What's happening, Mick?
Just trying to get over this, the hangover of these beatdowns Cincinnati professional sports has been taking lately.
It has been remarkable. It's like we're in a funk, you know? How do we snap out of it?
Well, I mean, winning kind of helps that, but other than that, I don't know. I mean, I really feel like the Bengals just gave away 3 winnable games, and we have our bye now, but the next 2, hey, they look a little bit tougher.
Yeah, here's where we get into the brunt of the schedule. You know, they lose 24-17 to the Steelers in a game in which, let's be honest, Mick, they probably should have won. I mean, they were up 14-6, driving down the field with the chance at minimum to go up 17-6, maybe even 21-6. I mean, it was a golden opportunity. Just the kind of fluke plays that really have hurt the Bengals over the last couple of weeks. You know, Dalton obviously didn't want to throw that football. It slipped out of his hands, and the next thing you know, Captain Momentum's going the other way, and the Bengals just never could recover. It's unfortunate, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more to talk about as far as this game goes here in just a bit. Just a reminder, you can email us at podcast@whodayfans.com. You can also give us a follow on Twitter. We are at Who-Dey Weekly. Joining us tonight at 9:20 is Sean O'Donnell from stripehype.com. He was a guest a couple months ago, and we're looking forward to having him back and get his take on the Cincinnati Bengals so far this season and what he's looking forward to in the second half. Don't forget, you can also give us a call, 404-WHO-DAY-7. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the Bengals. Give us a call on the Who-Dey line, and we'll get you, quote-unquote, on the air. All right, Mick, so let's take a look back at Pittsburgh. It was just, like you said, it was a winnable game tonight, Sunday night. They looked great early. They really were able to move the football. You know, A.J. Green, I wouldn't say he was active, but he ended up scoring a touchdown. But outside of that, the offense just kind of, after the turnover, the offense just kind of, I don't know, is it sputtering? I don't even know how to describe it.
I mean, it's terrible. And you know, A.J. Green had, you know, no impact in this game other than that touchdown catch. But, I mean, I think his impact was more that he was pulling coverage away from the other receivers. And, it was disturbing to see no one else step up in that, you know, that kind of, emptiness that he left. Like you would expect a bigger game from Gresham. And at the beginning of the game, it looked like they were going to try to get, my boy Sanu involved a little more. But, I mean, it was just ridiculous. And, this game really hit me deeper than it has in the past because I'm never one that jumps on the bandwagon like this guy should be benched or this guy should be fired. But I really feel like this might have been the feather in the cap or the last straw for me on this coaching staff. I'm not sold by any of them really, and which for me to say that is it's pretty different. I don't say things like that, but. I'm a big believer that, you got to give a coach time. You got to let it work it out. But this is regression at the worst time with young players that are used to winning. Anonymous in the chat room just said Jay Gruden worst 3 games. I agree. These are ridiculously bad games. And it summed it up at the end of the game when the Bengals had their last possession. And we needed to go down the field and score. And our first 2 plays are runs up the middle when the run hasn't worked since the first drive. Like that is insane play calling at the worst time, playing to the strengths of the defense and the weakness of the offense. It was just incredibly terrible. I cannot believe those were the play calls. It reminded me of Bob Bukowski, and I mean, I can't stand it. And it rolls up, and I don't know. I'm just so frustrated with the coaching. Oh man, it's just insane. And then they throw deep to, not deep, but they throw down the field to AJ Green, and he almost makes a ridiculous circus catch that he had no business even being near.
Right.
But you can't put that on a player like that. I mean, it's so insane that's what we did. That was our best showing against the Steelers, and it was just pathetic.
You're right. He's got AJ Green has no help. And it sounds like, and based on the quotes that I've read and everything else, that Jay Gruden was really hoping that Marvin Jones was going to be available during the game. He got injured, I think, on the opening kickoff. And from what I read, they really had basically made the game plan around him. They were really hoping to stretch the field with him. And then, of course, when that doesn't happen, you're stuck with Ryan Whalen. Now, Ryan Whalen, to me, I think is an okay wide receiver. He's not going to stretch the field, but at least he's going to run good routes, and he's going to catch the football. You could never say that in years past with some of the receivers. You never knew if Jerome Simpson was going to actually catch the football, which is the first and important thing for a receiver to do. But, again, when it's A.J. Green on one side, you've got Sanu, Hawkins, and Whalen not able to do anything else, of course you're going to shut out A.J. Green, and they're going to double him all night, which they did. Jermaine Gresham was really limited in the game. I can't even tell you a time I remember him making a play, Mickey. What does that tell you? To me, and the guy in the chat room a minute ago just said that it was the worst. You're right. It has been the worst 3 games of play calling I have seen since Jay Gruden took over. And to me, I'm stunned. And I'm at a loss for words, which is even more difficult for me. And I'm surprised that even you have gone negative, because you're like Captain Positive over there. You never want to badmouth the guys, and to hear you say those things is kind of surprising as well.
I mean, it is. And I came to the realization, and things could change in the season, but I'm over the Marvin Lewis era at this point. We've seen this regression too many times. We've seen a flash of a team. And then just nothing. And I mean, where's the play calling that we saw in the first few games, barring the Ravens game? But, the 3 wins we had, where is the aggression? Where we had none of that. We played the game, the players play the game that the coaches put out there, and our coaches are scared of the Steelers. They're scared of the Ravens. We play conservative. We play not to lose rather than to win, and it's ridiculous. You gotta create plays sometimes. You gotta work to get guys like Hawkins the ball. You cannot expect him to catch a 3-yard pass and take it 50 yards every game. And it's like we expect that. We're not running the screens. We're not playing to our strengths. We're not getting the ball in our playmakers' hands. And if a team shuts down AJ Green, we're stuck. If they can stop the run, we have nothing to throw at them. Yes, I know we have injuries. Yes, I know our defense is struggling.
But everybody does. So does the Steelers.
We do, and I get it. And this could be a better team in the second half. They could surprise some people and some wins, but I don't know. From what I've seen, I'm not impressed with our coach. We should be taking steps forward instead of steps back. And I feel like at the beginning of the season we might have had a step forward, and then we've just regressed 2 steps back. And I'm just over that. I'm not going to stay negative. I'm still going to expect the Bengals to, make a run. People call me a homer. I'm one of the most optimistic fans out there, but I'm also a realist, and I don't like what I'm seeing. Go on the other side of the ball. The defense isn't playing well, but my man, Perfect, is everywhere. You cannot watch this kid play and not be excited for what you're going to see for him from the next 10 years. You know what I mean? He is making plays. There was at least 2 times that he made Ray Maluga's play in front of Ray. And they got the tackle. What do you have, 15 and a half tackles or something ridiculous?
He had 15 tackles, 13 of them solo. 2 of them for a loss.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane for a kid that You didn't even know if he was going to make the team, and now he's your best defender. Like, insane. I'm so excited for that. I mean, that's the one thing I'm happy about from this last game.
Yeah, you're right. Perfect was he was a beast Sunday night. Fantastic game from him. It's unfortunate. The defense. I would say the defense did their job. I mean, they weren't bad. I mean, they held what? They held the Steelers to. I'm trying to see the yards here. Okay, never mind. 431 yards. Not great, but they were only down a touchdown late. So I would argue that the defense did okay, but they were on the field so much because the offense couldn't do anything. So I mean, hey,
you got to score.
You got to score points, and you have to take advantages of the opportunities you have. They had it in the first half.
If you're up 14-3, you can't take your foot off the gas, and we did, and it was ridiculous.
There were some signs early in the game with Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis making some good runs. They were able to move the ball on the ground, which was surprising, and it was unfortunate. He kind of he moved the ball basically the entire way down the field, and then they gave it to Pierman at the goal line. All right, so that's a little unfortunate for Ben Jarvis, but still, Pierman gets his first
fantasy
NFL
stat, though, right?
Well, agree, and that I'm not worried about that. But as long as they get in the end zone, that's all that matters. And
right.
So that was good to see Pierman get in the end zone. And I'm trying to be positive here. I'm trying to pick out the highlights of this game. You're right. Perfect was a monster. But at the end of the day, Mick, a loss is a loss. It's going to sting because these first 7 games, this was the light portion. This was the portion that was going to get you set up to maybe sustain a playoff run down the stretch here. And now they're going to have to fight. They're going to have to fight to the death to get into the postseason.
They're in the playoffs now. I mean, they have to play like the San Francisco Giants. They have to play with their backs against the wall. It's your season, and you got a tough road to get there. Your next 2 games facing the Manning brothers are tough. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. Both those teams playing well, and they're set up as the type of teams that are going to, expose the Bengals secondary, and that's one of our weaknesses. So I hope that our coaches can adjust. I hope they actually come with some decent game plans and maybe switch them up at halftime if things aren't working. Even if things are working, keep the other team on their toes. Because, I did a post on earlier this week. We're getting outscored 64-109 in the second half, which just shows that teams are adjusting to us and we are failing to adjust to teams. And that's coaching. It's bad. It's coaching.
That's a good point, Mick. And I want to bring up the point you made a couple minutes ago about the offensive play calling, and that where is the creativity? And I feel like we've been saying this now for a couple weeks. We saw the opening play of the game against the Redskins, lining up in a wildcat and throwing a bomb. Yeah, I know everybody's going to be kind of expecting it now, but there's still other ways to get creative, and I'm just not seeing it. And maybe I'm so worn down as a Bengals fan that I'm failing to see the things I should be seeing. But I don't know how much more losing I can take without putting these blinders on. It feels like here we go again. 2009, they make the postseason. They followed up a year later. They get TO, and they go on a 10-game losing streak. This smells of 2010 all over again.
It does. We're streaking right now, and like we said at the beginning, these were all winnable games. Had you kept your momentum up 14-3 on the Steelers and made that statement on Sunday night, you're second after your bye. It's a totally different season right there. Even though it's a 1-game swing, it's huge what it does for your confidence, your momentum. We're 0-3 in our division now. That's not.
No, we're 1-3.
We're 1-3. Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot the Browns.
I know it was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, but we have lost 3 games in our division now, which that's tough to come back from.
Yeah, definitely. One more thing before we kind of wrap up the Steelers, and just in a couple minutes we'll be joined by Sean O'Donnell from Stripe Pipe. One thing that really concerns me is that it seems like Andy Dalton now, and it's been ever since the playoff game against the Texans, he gets an awful lot of balls batted down at the line of scrimmage, a lot of balls that are picked off at the line of scrimmage. What do you make of that? I mean, is it something that you can correct, or is this something you're concerned about going forward?
I'm absolutely concerned. I mean, you know how hard it is for a lineman to reach up and snag a ball, and I get it. In the Steelers game, you know, his arm might have been hit, and it was, you know, deflected a little bit, hit the Bengals helmet, but that's twice, you know, including the playoffs last year where the defensive linemen just had to reach up and grab the ball. As bad as an interception is at the line, it just shows that you're not throwing the ball correctly. You're not, you know, picking your lane, and you're not getting it over even your own lineman, which is bad. And you know, Kurt says it happens when he throws to Hawkins. That may be true, trying to throw those short passes. And if he has trouble making that throw, why are you going to put him in a position to make that throw?
Right.
I'm baffled all the way around. I'm baffled by some of the decision making from Dalton as well as from Gruden. I mean, the reason why I bring up Bob Burkowski's, you know, thoughts is, you know, on paper or on Madden, these plays might just look awesome. but if your personnel doesn't fit the plays you're calling, you're not doing your job right. And I think that some coaches are incredibly, you know, on the other side of the ball, Dick LeBeau is ridiculous at putting his playmakers in a position to make the plays. And I think that, you know, some offensive teams, you know, do the same thing. Look at the 49ers. Like, they have, you know, a little bit weaker quarterback. For a while they had no receivers, and they were winning games because they were running the type of offense that worked for who they had out there at the time. Shoot, look at the Denver last year.
Right.
No better example than Tebow last year. They can't run the normal offense, so they ran the plays that were going to win them games, and they did. And they got in the playoffs, and they beat the Steelers. Those are the kind of, you know, decisions you want from an offensive coordinator, not ones that like, oh, this play would be awesome when it doesn't fit your personnel. And I think that's what we're seeing, and that disturbs me because I don't want to go through that Bob Burkowski crap again because it's just insane.
3-4 on the year now, a 3-game losing streak heading into the bye week. Not a lot to really hang your hat on from an offensive standpoint. In fact, really for any standpoint. If you think about it, they were bailed out in the Washington game because the Mike Shanahan got I don't know what the term is, got cocky and thought that they could single cover A.J. Green. That was really the only reason why the Bengals won that game. They barely beat the Browns at Paul Brown Stadium, and I believe it was I think it was week 2 or week 3. So the wins weren't great. But you thought, okay, you would think by week 7 you would see some improvement. And I feel like even in where we were at week 1 when we got our butts kicked by the Ravens to where we're at today, I'm not seeing improvement in any position from the quarterback to the defensive line, who we thought was going to be great. The only bright spot there has been Geno Atkins with 8 sacks on the year now. But other than that, I feel like even they're regressing.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that maybe Perfect is the only player that has really just every game shown you a little more. But yeah, I agree. We're not seeing the improvement, and what's so frustrating right now, you know, we're still in the mess from Sunday night. Is had we won that game, it's a totally different season. You have so much more like going for you. And Anonymous in the chat room again, when have you ever seen improvement as the season progressed?
Right.
The Bengals are a first half team that usually failed, you know, to carry the momentum into the second half, and that's scary for this season. You know, hopefully they flip the script this time. You know, I mean, hey, they come out of the bye, they beat the Broncos, they beat the Giants. All of a sudden this team's relevant again. But I mean, from what I've seen, I'm not confident that's going to happen. But there is talent on this team. There is the ability to stretch the field with A.J. Green and to pick up chunks of yards with, you know, some of your underneath receivers like Hawkins and Waylon, or, you know, Mohamed Sanu's a big body receiver. You know, he's a possession receiver, you know, kind of like a TJ Hushman. I'd love to see more of him. Green Ellis at times has moved the ball. There are things this team can do, you know. Get Dre on defense, get him in there, get some guys healthy. There's the potential for this team to do some of that, but I don't think any Bengals fan other than Reed is that confident that that's going to happen. but I don't know. I'll turn my hat around, put on the rally cap, and hope for the best in the second half.
Well, speaking of of confident Bengals fans and maybe Bengals fans that are out there that are excited about this team, or at least was excited going into the season, maybe his thoughts have changed here after I guess the quote unquote first half of the season for the Bengals. We're joined now by Sean O'Donnell of StripeHype.com. What's going on, Sean? How you been?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on. And how you guys doing tonight?
Well, we could be doing better. The Bengals could be, 5-3, but unfortunately, right now they kind of hit a stumbling block in the season with 3 straight losses. Give us your overall assessment here of the first 7 games, Sean.
Well, as far as the first 7 games go, obviously Week 1 was a disaster against Baltimore, but that was a daunting task in itself. To play in Baltimore with such a young team on such a big stage. Not much, should have been expected of the team, at that point of the season. I did like how the team rallied after, that devastating loss, and they came back basically on the arm of Andy Dalton to win 3 straight games. And, the defense started coming together, especially with the return of Carlos Dunlap. They got the pass rush back. They've got 23 sacks on the season at this point. And they're looking sharp up front. They're getting better stuffing the run. Earlier in the season, they were having a lot of trouble with that. But there's things that the Bengals have done really well in the first half of the season, and there's obviously things that have been kind of tragic for the team, especially the last 3 weeks. The offense has come out extremely flat. The turnovers have been insurmountable for the Bengals. They just Dalton's thrown a lot of interceptions, most of which I actually think were not his fault, but, nonetheless. Had 3 fumbles this year, and, after 590 career carries without one, he caught Cedric Benson syndrome. And, there's some things that have been unexpected this year. There's been some injuries, guys going on IR, losing Cook, losing Scott, losing Lawson, or not Lawson, I'm sorry, losing Thomas Howard, guys like that, Travell Wharton, that's hurt the team, and it's kind of forced them into a rebuilding, while the season endures. And, that's been one of the roadblocks for the Bengals this season, and I think why they haven't been as spectacular as a lot of us had hoped they would be, in the early stages of training camp in the preseason. But there's a lot of positive notes to take out of the first half. There's a huge debate going on about Andy Dalton right now, whether we should be really worried about him or whether he'll be okay. Personally, I think the guy's going to be just fine. Obviously, he had a terrible game against Pittsburgh this past Sunday night. A lot of that really wasn't his fault, I believe. There were things that were his fault, but going forward, I think this is a good quarterback to have. He certainly has the makings of a franchise quarterback. He's a super high football IQ, and I believe he can lead this team for years to come. Other players that have emerged, look at Vontaze Burfict. I mean, undrafted free agent out of Arizona State. We didn't even know if he'd make the team through training camp. And not only did he make the team, he's starting at will linebacker right now. And, just maybe the, best defensive player on the team right now. He's absolutely been stellar against the Steelers on Sunday night. He just seemed to be everywhere on the field. He had 15 total tackles in this game, 2 for a loss. He was disruptive. He's a great tackler in space. He can really wrap up, and he's a big hitter. And, to boot, he's actually pretty good in coverage. So, there's some bright spots of the Bengals, but it's still going to be, there's still a learning curve for this team. They're still working out the kinks with the young guys. And, even if it's not this year, there's still a bright future ahead, I think, for the franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I kind of touched on that. Perfect. I mean, the kid's just amazing. But I'm actually going to fire off a question from the chat room, and one of the most frustrating things for me, and one of the reasons why I hate I hate Twitter is because it gives idiots a voice, and I get it that like that's the kind of tool it's for. But I love reading insightful stuff. I love things that make me think. I hate when people tweet to a player about how their family should die or whatever. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But one of the things that is hot right now is how people are comparing Dalton to Carson Palmer and saying, Dalton's not the quarterback Carson Palmer was, things like that. And it's just ridiculously frustrating that people are ready to close the book on a kid that, exceeded expectations last year. And sure, maybe he's having a rough go, but, I think he's the guy to do the job. So, long-winded, but to get to the question from our chat room right now is someone's asking, what do you base the fact that you said Dalton's a franchise quarterback? Like, what do you see in him that you base that statement off of?
Well, basically what I see in Dalton is I see a lot of command on the field. I see a really good presence. He can get guys lined up. Like I mentioned before, he has a very, very high football IQ. He knows how to read defenses. He knows how to audible. He knows when to change blocking assignments. He does all of these things very well. He gets his receivers lined up right, gets them in the right spots. Over the off season, there are questions about arm strength, things like that. I really don't see where those questions have arisen from. I mean, if you look at the touchdown pass that he threw to A.J. Green against the Steelers game where he squeezed it between two defenders, I mean, that thing was an absolute bullet. He has the arm strength to be a very, very good quarterback in the NFL. Other things that I like about Dalton is that he picks things up very fast. He came in with no off season as a rookie, learned the playbook, and was very successful with it. This year he's taken more onto his shoulders. Being that the Bengals have a dismal running game, to put it gently, and he's really had to shoulder the load. And unfortunately for a young quarterback, when you're throwing so much, you're prone to having some mistakes on the field. And Dalton, sure, he does have 10 interceptions on the season. I could tell you that maybe 4 of those 10, I would put the blame actually on Dalton. There were a number of routes that were run poorly by wide receivers where Dalton put the ball in the right spot and his intended target wasn't there. As you know, in Gruden's West Coast system, Dalton is throwing timing routes. He's throwing to a spot on the field. He needs his intended target to be at the spot where he throws to. And if the receiver runs a wrong route, if a defender isn't, Johnny on the spot, it's going to get picked off. There's been multiple balls this year that have gone right through the hands of intended targets that have wound up becoming interceptions. The interception he threw against the Redskins in Week 3, where he threw the pick six right into his own end zone right there. A lot of people don't realize that Dalton got hit on his blind side as he let go of that ball. There's a good possibility that that could have been a positive gain if he wasn't under duress from the blind side there. So there's a lot of other reasons why people shouldn't really be ready to say Dalton's a wash, Dalton's a bust. He's not. He's got great mobility actually, which is something that the Bengals haven't seen for a while. He's shifty in the pocket. He can move around. He can create plays with his legs. I'm sure everybody remembers a scramble play, that turned into a 50-plus yard touchdown to Andrew Hawkins against the Browns earlier this season. And there are some things he needs to improve on. His accuracy isn't there 100% of the time. He needs to progress through his reads a little bit better. He tends to fire the ball, really early, usually before he has it, for a duration of 2 seconds. He's letting it go to his first read, and he's throwing in a really tight windows. Things like that he still needs to improve on. He's in his sophomore season. He's only halfway through his sophomore season. He's generally, in my eyes, still basically a rookie, being that he's only had one off season in the NFL. Give this guy some time to learn. From what I've seen out of Dalton, he's very poised. He knows what he's doing. He's very smart when he's on the football field. And given the right amount of time and the right amount of coaching, I really think this guy can develop into something pretty special.
We're talking to Sean O'Donnell from StripeHype.com here on Who-Dey Weekly. And Sean, you had a good article today. In fact, Reed in our chat room wanted to say a great article. So there, Reed. I'm sending along that message to Sean. And one of the things one of the things that you wrote about in your article, you gave a nice little "come on, man" to Marvin. You know, I don't know what to make of Marvin because I'm on. There are times where I feel like I think he gets a bad rap. But there are also a lot of times where I think, what are you doing? What is your take on the coaching job that Marvin has done so far here in 2012?
Well, you know, I'm right there with you on Marvin. You know, sometimes I'm with you, like exactly what you said. Sometimes I think he gets a bad rap for things that goes on, and other times, you know, you really do kind of shake your head at for certain things that he does. You know, as I pointed out in one of my articles today, that you know the challenges that you know against Pittsburgh this past Sunday night, when he challenged the completion for Mike Wallace late in the third quarter was completely boneheaded. I mean, you know, Wallace had clear. Possession of the ball. His knee hit the ground after being touched by a Bengal. He was down, and then, the ball wobbled, afterwards or whatever. But obviously, to everybody watching, it was a complete pass. I'm not really sure what possessed him to throw the challenge flag. I think even Marvin said himself, post-game that, it was kind of a bad call on his part. But you wonder what he thinks, though. I mean, you've got a team that's in contention to win a game, especially, if you're down, by one score. That going into the fourth quarter, every timeout is absolutely precious. And, to waste it on a challenge where, you kind of do it on a whim is just kind of boneheaded in my book. And that's the thing with Marvin is that he makes some absolutely great decisions sometimes. Don't get me wrong. There's a reason that he's held this head coaching position in Cincinnati for 10 seasons. He's a great personnel manager. He would make a terrific GM. I think almost everybody in Bengals can agree with me on that. If Mike Brown were to appoint Marvin Lewis as to GM of the team, I don't really think there would be any backlash there because obviously he's terrific as far as the draft goes, as far as managing personnel. As a head coach, he's kind of he's been up and down. He's had his great moments and he's had his poor moments. I will always I'll always be skeptical about the way he manages the clock. He late in the games, if the Bengals are down, there doesn't really seem to be a sense of urgency on the field. Or late in the games when the Bengals are up, there's some very I'll say lax play calling going on, and it doesn't seem like he's quite figured out how to close out a game just yet. And after 10 seasons as a head coach, you really hope that the guy would have figured that out by now. So Marvin, obviously, I gave him a big come on, man, for his for his coaching duties against Pittsburgh. And I most certainly would have given him a couple other come on mans at earlier times this season. But then, there are other times this season where Marvin's done some good things and I've had praise for him. I don't think that there is any kind of reason for anyone to start saying, okay, fire Marvin, his time is up. Let's see what he can do for the rest of the year. Let's see what kind of adjustments they make during the bye week. Let's see how, what kind of adjustments they make with their personnel. And, and let's take it from there. He had a couple-year extension, over the off season. Let's see if he makes the best of it.
Well, and I'm usually in your boat. I'm usually like, not an apologist, but I'm usually a guy that says, let the coaches have their years. Let the people, build their team, model it around what they want. And I can tell you that with these past 3 losses, I'm ready for a change at coach, and I don't think it should be midseason, but I just think, for example, the theme in these losses is that the Bengals, they don't have that killer instinct. They don't know how to put teams away. But I would argue that the Bengals are running the plays that are called. And I think if you look at the games we're up, kind of like you mentioned, and our play calling where we play so conservative, and if you compare that to a team like that, everyone's compared to the Patriots, they're up 2 touchdowns. They're still throwing the ball. They don't want to let that other team sniff the chance to get back in the game. The Bengals don't. They'll run it up the middle, throw a screen, and punt. And they've been like that, since I can remember. But, it's continued through Marvin's era. And, down, a touchdown to the Steelers at home on Sunday night, probably the last time you're going to see the ball, your first 2 play calls are, heavy guys running up the middle. How is your team supposed to have, a cutthroat, like let's go out and kill them attitude when you're calling plays like that? So, that's, I guess, where I'll disagree with you, but I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to switch it up to, all right, we talked about the past enough. What can we do now to get better for this season? If you look at our next 2 games against the Manning brothers, that's a tough test. And, if the Bengals, drop those next 2, that's really a ridiculous hole you're asking your team to dig out of. So your thoughts on the next half of the season or even the next, 3 games we play, what do you think the Bengals need to do to turn this ship around?
Well, the first thing that I really believe they should do, and I'm just going to plug an article real quick here that I wrote earlier today, not the one that we referred to, earlier on in the show here, but I put an article up on Bleacher Report today, and it was, it's about the Bengals, obviously, and it was, 5 things that, or 5 adjustments that I feel they should consider over the bye week, and these 5 adjustments that I mentioned in the article, I really think will help the Bengals going forward. And, some of them actually really apply to your question right here. One of the adjustments that I actually spoke about in the article was I really do think that Jay Gruden needs to sit down and he needs to tinker with his offense. He brought a West Coast offense here, into Cincinnati last year. It worked well, for what it was, while Dalton was learning. Now that Dalton's more experienced, A.J. Green's becoming one of the most dominant receivers in the league. I really feel that Jay Gruden needs to open up his playbook. Dalton threw the ball 28 times against Pittsburgh. 4 of those 28 passes went past 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. So all of his passes were these short routes, quick outs, just, cutting it loose real quick, to go along with, a kind of a power running game, I guess you would call it. Entire defenses are just moving up and cluing in on these short patterns. They're sitting down in the routes. Receivers can't get separation this way. I really think that Jay Gruden, needs to figure out a way to take some deeper shots down the field, allow Andy Dalton to throw it up there, and trust A.J. Green with a jump ball, as he did so many times in his rookie season. It seems as though the play calling over the past 3 weeks has become more and more conservative. That they don't have that big play strike as they did earlier in the season. I don't know if they're concerned about turnovers and they're trying to, fix that issue or what, but I really do think that they need to kind of rework, their scheme and also their personnel. I believe, especially after seeing him on Sunday night, I believe they really need to get Mohamed Sanu in there. I think Sanu deserves a healthy amount of snaps, either at the number 2 position opposite Green or in the slot. Sanu showed that he's got great hands. He's not afraid to catch over the middle. He's a big body at 6'2", 210-plus pounds. And he's a tough guy to bring down. He's a great possession receiver, a P.J. Houshmandzadeh of sorts, and I really think that they need to give him some more time in there with the first-team offense, especially after the loss of Marvin Jones. You can't, count on another speedster on the outside. So, bring in Sanu, throw some tough routes to him, over the middle, let him make some tough catches, drag a couple people for some extra yards. If you have that guy going over the middle, it'll free up Jermaine Gresham, who's basically been the only one doing that this season. And if you start to do that, defenses will have to start playing a little bit more honest It will free up A.J. Green, on the sidelines for some deeper routes. There's a lot of things I think that Jay Gruden can do with the talent that he has on offense to really open things up and to actually become a formidable opponent to these difficult teams that are going to be playing, such as the Broncos and the Giants. That's one of the big things that I would strongly consider doing on the offensive side of the ball, to become relevant, really. On defense, guys just pretty much need to get healthy and stay healthy. They could use Drake Kirkpatrick on the field. They could use Jason Allen on the field because obviously after Leon Hall, they're really suffering at cornerback. Another thing I pointed out in the article, and I'm not afraid to say it, and I will say it, bench Ray Maluga. Sit him on the sidelines. I would rather not see him out on the field whatsoever anymore. I firmly believe that he's the worst middle linebacker in the NFL to this point of the season. Vontaze Burfict has been terrific this season. I think you put him back in his natural spot in the middle. You keep Manny Lawson on the strong side, and then you get a rotation on the weak side. Dan Skuta, he's mainly a strong side linebacker. He's played middle in a pinch. I'm sure he could learn the weak side. You can bring in Dante Mock to spell him on passing downs as a pass rusher. Vincent Ray you still have there, who is used to practicing over there on the strong side. So I think mix up the linebackers. See what Burfict can do in the middle. See how it improves the Bengals defense as far as stopping the run goes, or actually finally being able to cover a tight end for a change. I really think that these are certain keys that the Bengals can do to really, strengthen their team, become a contender again.
Well, we'll see what happens here in the next 9 weeks after the bye week to see if Marvin Lewis is hearing what you're selling, Sean. For folks out there who want to check out what you're writing at Stripe Hype and at Bleacher Report, where can they find you?
You can find me at stripehype.com. A bunch of good, talented writers over there. It's all Bengals all the time. I just posted an article today calling out the good and the bad and the ugly from the Steelers game this past Sunday, so you can go check that out over there. I'm also writing for Bleacher Report about the Cincinnati Bengals. So you go on to Bleacher Report and look me up on there. If you go to the Cincinnati page on Bleacher Report, I'm sure you'll see a number of my stuff. And if you want to, chat it up with me, Bengals or what have you, you can find me on Twitter. It's Sean O. Diesel on Twitter. It's SeanODiesel. So catch up with me at any of those places. Be more than happy to talk to you about Bengals.
Go find Sean. He's a good follow on Twitter, and he's a good author as well. Sean, thanks for joining us here on Who-Dey Weekly, and hopefully the Bengals can turn it around.
All right, hope so too. Thanks a lot for having me. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Take it easy, Sean.
All right, bye-bye.
That is Sean O'Donnell of StripeHype.com. Mickey, he brought up an awful lot of good points. One of the points that he did mention is the play of Ray Maluga. Marvin Lewis kind of came out and said this week that that's not happening. He's not going to be changing Maluga anytime soon.
Another reason why, I'm tired of Marvin. And I don't know that we have the guy on the roster right now to replace Ray. So,
right.
I'll give him that. But I feel like Marvin is loyal to the vets. I mean, you can look at how much time, Armand Benz maybe, he stepped up at the beginning of the season, had some solid play. But Tate as a receiver, I'm not sold with. I mean, if this guy was a kick returner only, maybe I could see his need on the team. Because I feel like he has done a little better this year in returning kick, but as a receiver, he adds nothing to the game. And you got, you draft a ton of receivers. You ended up getting rid of at least one in the draft. So you have Marvin Jones and Sanu, and they're not seeing the field. And I get it, Jones is hurt now, but I don't get, Mohamed Sanu seems like the type of receiver that the Bengals are missing on the field right now. He's not going to be the A.J. Green. He's not going to stretch the field. He's not going to, add that dimension, but he's going to be the big body guy. I said it earlier. Sean just repeated it. Compare him to T.J. Houshmandzadeh, both of us. That's what we need. We need that guy that's going to get to the sticks, get your first down. We don't need to hit a home run on every pass. and for whatever reason, Marvin's throwing the vets out there, and I feel like he's doing the same thing on the defensive side of the ball, and it's frustrating, and it's another reason why I'm over it. I don't. There are a lot of decisions that Marvin is making that are frustrating, I'm done trying to understand it because it's been 10 seasons. You know, we got it. We got to make the call sometime, and I just think he's unless he makes some ridiculous, second half run and we start knocking off every team. I just don't see the need for him to be here. He brought the Bengals from terrible to mediocre, and now they've just kind of been idling at mediocre. We need to take that next step to get past mediocre, and I think Marvin's proving he may not be the guy to do it.
Well, one guy who's been critical of Ray Maluga over the past couple of weeks joins us on the phone. John from Kentucky, what's happening, man?
Hey, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the call once again. Got my semi parked tonight up in New York. Nothing better to do but sit here and listen to you guys. Love your show, Nick. I really do. Was in the chat room earlier, but I've just got a smartphone, and I think I need to get a newer one. I was struggling to keep up. But anyway, look, all the negatives, I mean, we could write a book on the negatives of the Cincinnati Bengals. The only positive thing that I know to say, and I told this to my son after the game. We went to the game Sunday night, and he was all down and out after they lost. And I said, why are you so down? He said, because, I've told all my friends at school. My son's 16, by the way. He said, I've told all my friends that I just guaranteed Cincinnati would win. And I said, well, look, you had a great time. This is the closest NFL stadium to where we live. And I'm going to tell you, if we went to see the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh, I'm telling you right now, not only would it cost a lot more money, but the Steelers are not advertising for ticket sales the way the Bengals are. My point is the silver lining, the good in this situation is the Bengals for now are a bargain. And if you want to watch an NFL game, I think next season, I look for the Bengals to completely fall apart this season. And I think next season they're going to be begging people to come to the games.
Well, yeah, and the same thing happened a year ago, John, when they were winning. They were 9-7 a year ago, and they struggled to get the last home game sold out. So this is not unfamiliar territory here in Cincinnati.
You're exactly right. Well, I took 6 people to the game, and paid for it out of my pocket. My sister and brother-in-law and the preacher and his wife from my church had never been to see the Steelers play in Cincinnati, and they absolutely loved it. Bear in mind the Steelers won, of course. But the whole atmosphere was awesome, and I would like to see some more night games happen in the future. And it is really a shame that Paul Brown, what on earth was he doing when he left his team to his son without in writing a general manager stipulation? I just don't understand it.
Well, you're preaching to the choir on that one, John. We've been screaming that for almost 25 years now. But the unfortunate thing, and I too would like them to see them play more night games. But the only way that's going to happen, John, is if they keep winning. And unfortunately, right now they're in the midst of a 3-game slide. Hopefully they can get out of it. And John, thanks for calling us here on Who-Dey Weekly. Safe travels from New York, and hopefully we hear from you next week, man.
Oh, you will. I'll definitely call you again. Take care, gentlemen. Love your show.
Take it easy, John. Who-Dey. So there you go, Mick. Brings up a lot of good points.
I love that guy. We should have had the John from Kentucky segment. You got to do a little sound for it.
That's a good idea. I will do that. That's a great idea. He
seems like a good dude. I like that guy.
Absolutely. But he does bring up some good points, that the team, like the advertising for ticket sales, you're right. You don't see that in other stadiums because, most of the time the stadiums are full.
You do, though. I mean, he makes a good point about Pittsburgh maybe, but, I would argue Houston sells a ton of tickets they advertise. If there's tickets available, there's going to be advertising. I guess in a warped way of thinking, your team being average to below average for so long will make it more affordable to go to the game. But I'm just going to address Reed in the chat room. Like, Reed, man, I agree with you. The Bengals have the potential to turn it around and go there. And yes, this is a negative podcast. It just seems like we're down on it, but I mean, you know me. I'm a homer. I'm gonna keep, wearing my orange and black and thinking they're gonna win every game. It's just that I'm seeing the pattern that we've seen so many times, and it's frustrating. And so this is, I mean, Nick can call it the gripe podcast if he wants, because that's what it's been. But
well, I mean, it's tough when you lose like we're losing, though, Mick. I mean, to show up with it seemed like no heart against Cleveland, to have the Steelers on the ropes and let them back in, and it's easy to fall into that path. I mean, we are trained as Bengals fans for the last 22 years that here we go again. I mean, it's just how it's how it works.
It's true. I mean, we've seen it, and I don't know. Like, one of the most frustrating things to me is that it is predictable, and so, like, I have the type of fans that some of the guys I work with, they're like, oh, the Bengals are going to lose. And I ask them why, and I get, because they always lose. Like, come on, tell me why. But it's ridiculous that they can be right so many times, because
right.
The Bengals do follow that pattern for no real logic. Like, this was the game the Bengals should have beat the Steelers. Steelers are not a good team. They are not a good football team this year. Everyone can say they're back because they saw them beat the Bengals, come back from 14-3, but they're no good. And I fully expect the Bengals to beat them in Pittsburgh. But, yeah, it's just frustrating to see the team lose games they should win.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. It's been a very frustrating season to date. They look so good early, and now they look like a completely different team. Just from an energy standpoint, from an enthusiasm standpoint, they just seem to have, hit a wall. But the good news is, Mickey, is they can't lose this weekend because they don't play. And they have a week to prepare for one of the Mannings. They're going to see back-to-back Manning brothers here in the next couple of weeks. So before we go, just a reminder that you can download the show on iTunes. Leave us a review if you get a chance. We certainly appreciate it. Big thanks to everybody who sent the podcast award nominations. We're going to find out on Sunday night, Mickey, whether or not we were finalists in the sports category. So, again, thank you to everybody who submitted nominations, and we'll keep you posted as far as that goes. Hopefully we're finalists, so we'll be bugging you guys to be voting for us a lot over the next couple of weeks. And before we go, we always have to do some shout-outs. Who do you have a shout-out for this week, Mick?
Well, I'm gonna stay positive since we've been so negative. I'm gonna shout out a couple new followers. I got Michael Smith, who's at Mother5081Smith. Following me, talking some little bit of politics, a little bit of Bengals. So, and then I'm going with Luke, who I don't know if Luke's even allowed to be up this late, so he may not be listening live. He looks pretty young in his Twitter picture, but he's at Luke7473, and I believe he was in a commercial at one time with Anthony Munoz, but just a shout out to him. Oh, thanks for following, guys.
Very cool. Speaking of Anthony Munoz, he retweeted me on Sunday night during the football game. That was kind of cool. Thanks, Coach Munoz. Also a former guest on the show as well. Mickey has very fond memories of that interview. I'm going to give a shout out to a guy at Fatal Content. He's down in Florida, down in Miami. Big Bengals fan down there in South Beach. There's my shout out for this week. If you want to be shouted out on the program, hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Who-Dey Weekly. Mickey is at Who-Dey Fans. And then we can't forget, the reason why, and I have a strong feeling this is why it's happening, Mickey. A year ago when Tim was doing the show, he kept picking the Bengals to lose. Now, he hasn't been on the program, and look what happened. We can blame Tim. We need to get Tim Bates back on the program and get him on here predicting the Bengals to lose. So do us a favor, because I know Tim's going to listen. Send him all your tweets. Bug him. He's at Tim Boots, TIMMBOOTS. Ask him, when is he coming back to Who-Dey Weekly? Tim, we need you, man. Come back soon. We miss you. And of course, give us a follow. I'm at Who-Dey Weekly as well. Wow, this is a very long show, Mick. 55 minutes. Might be the longest we've ever had.
It was a good one, though. And, just I don't know who he is, but in the chat room, we've got Anonymous tonight. And, he's brought up some great points. So he wanted a shout-out to A.J. Green and Baby Hawk. So we'll give it, who knows if those guys listen or not. But if they do, they're making the Bengals relevant when the rest of the team is trying to make them irrelevant. So shout out to those guys too. But yeah, it was a good show. It was good to get this off our chest.
It's not like us. Generally, you and I are very positive. You more than me, I will admit that. But this 3-game slide really brings out a lot of angry emotions. We're heavily invested into this team. You more so than me. I mean, you're a season ticket holder. I spent a lot of money on Sunday ticket, so I want to see them do well, too. So I will do my best. I'm going to cleanse this out of my system tonight. I'm going to come back strong next Wednesday. We're going to be super positive, episode number 87, and I'm looking forward to catching up. And like I said, hopefully we'll have some announcements as far as the podcast awards go, and we're going to do our best to be positive because that's what we do here, Mick, right?
We're positive. We're Bengals fans first and foremost.
Absolutely. Once again, big thanks to Sean O'Donnell for joining us this week on the podcast. Mick, it's been grand, and I'll catch you next week.
All right, man. I'm looking forward to it.
And that is going to wrap up episode 86 of Who-Dey Weekly. Don't forget you can email us at podcast@whodayfans.com and give us a follow on Twitter at Who-Dey Weekly. Who-Dey Weekly is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. For my co-host, Mickey Metzer, and our good buddy, Tim Bates, I'm Nick Subling. Hey, we'll see you next week on Who-Dey Weekly. Who-Dey.
Who-Dey.